My childhood dream job, yeah. Um, yeah, I had different ideas when I was a child. I mean, I grew up in rural Wisconsin, and when I was younger, when I went to college, I decided I never wanted to leave, so that's how I ended up becoming a professor. I mean, I grew up. Our house was 7 miles from the closest town. The closest town had a population of 5,000. I started going to school for kindergarten through 4th grade in a school that in a town that was unincorporated, Gillingham, Wisconsin, and so going to university at the University of Wisconsin was my first sort of taste of a more cosmopolitan world, and so yeah. I'm actually a medievalist in terms of my current research, and I'm writing a book now. I'm finishing a book on a man named Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, that he was a revivalist. So modern revivalists and want to go back to what you could describe as a kind of Puritan form of Islam. So Ghazali, who died 900 years ago, also called on Muslims to return to what he called the essence of Islam, but he had a very different understanding of what that was, a more sort of mystical and philosophical understanding. And it's interesting to see him employing some of the same kind of revivalist discourses, the same revivalist arguments or revivalist rhetoric that contemporary revivalists are, but yet with a very different understanding of what exactly was being revived and what Muslims ought to return to. And it shows you how different interpretations of Islam can be. Like a lot of people who go into my field, I studied Arabic for a year in Egypt in 1995-96. So that was more than 15 years ago. And I hadn't been there since then. I had a very different status just in the eyes of Egyptian society than I did being there this time. Also, of course, it was really shocking to think that when I was there in '95, Mubarak had already been in office for almost 15 years, and that up until this time last year, that was another 15 years, 30 years of Mubarak. So the country is really going through some profound changes right now with the end of Mubarak's rule. One of the things that I found is that in some ways everyone refers to it as a revolution, but it's a very unfinished revolution. In that the military regime is still there. The constitution that they're using so far, they're going to be writing a new one, but it's still more or less the same constitution as before. So Mubarak is gone, but Mubarak was the front man for a military regime, and the military regime is still there. Whereas Egypt hasn't yet really made that transition that Tunisia has. I mean, the people are still struggling to see what direction the country is going to go in. There are a lot more is up in the air in Egypt. Reading editorials and commentary on the Egyptian situation, I think that, for one thing, people need to recognize that conservative Islam really is the most dynamic force in Egyptian society right now, and that's true in much of the, at least the countries that I know in North Africa or the Middle East. But within that, of course, there's a great spectrum of difference among different conservative Muslims. So Salafism is some people call it Islam's new religious movement. They formed a political party, the Noor Party, the Light Party, which captured 25% of the vote in Egypt, which shocked everybody. The longer, the more established political party, actually, is the Muslim Brotherhood, and also are very savvy politically. If I looked at campaign posters when I was there, I saw the Muslim Brotherhood, having campaign posters up about healthcare, about transportation, about education. I didn't see anybody else actually campaigning on what you would call issues, and I think it's no surprise that Egyptians found their message appealing. Another force in Egypt today is the Al-Azhar University, and has been understood then as kind of a mouthpiece of the government to work very closely, has been working very closely with the government. And then the final trend, I guess you'd call it, is a group called Du'a al-Qudud, the new preachers. Again, a kind of conservative Islam, but for a hipper crowd. And so really, where I see Egypt going, socially and also politically, is I think something that's going to have to be understood within that spectrum of conservative Islam. It wasn't long ago that many people saw secularism as the inevitable, destination, especially, worldwide in all human societies, in all, modern societies, and, more especially in Western societies. And in the past few decades, I think we've seen that religion continues to play an important role in society, in culture, in politics, in people's lives. You know, understanding religious traditions, religious discourses, the way that people appeal for, to religious authority or contest religious authority, try to argue about who has the right to represent the religion or speak in its name. That's something important. We're not a theology department. We don't we don't teach religion prescriptively. We teach it descriptively, and that's what we